Now that the game is getting a bit closer to being concluded, we're getting to the lower parts of the mansion-esque place that we're trying to escape from. And because of story reasons and cutscene shenanigans, Billy Cohen has now been lost to the raging waters underneath the mansion, and Rebecca is trying to find him. On the way there, she is traversing the factory level, which thankfully is the shortest level in the entire game, comprising about 3 rooms, a couple hallways, a bunch of hunters, and a giant grain elevator. On the way down, another unlucky happenstance happens to show up while she's trying to activate the elevator in classic Resident Evil fashion, except there's no time limit this time. The Proto-Tyrant, and unfortunately Capcom didn't actually give us a backstory for why this guy is just roaming around the quote-unquote factory level, just kind of around for no reason. What you find out if you played the spin-off Umbrella Chronicles is that the basic gist of why the Proto-Tyrant is down here is because Umbrella was trying to dispose of it, so they just threw it wherever, and that was it. Of course, Wesker will eventually shoot it to pieces, even though Rebecca kinda did that for him, but this is the Proto-Tyrant, who is fueling some genuine Lisa Trevorness in all cases. So, yeah, it basically survives everything except a rocket launcher to the face, I don't know. The boss fight with the Proto-Tyrant is actually pretty solid work, and a real good challenge from Capcom, coming right after the giant bat boss fight from the last level, which was just a pile of frickin' bloody nails thrown at your face for shits and giggles. The Proto-Tyrant actually falls in line with the difficulty curve and is actually dangerous without being bullshit, but there are definite caveats to that. The one attack that the Proto-Tyrant has is some sort of wake-up charge attack. There are a bunch of problems with this attack that kind of screw over the boss fight's quality, but considering that it's just one attack, it doesn't ruin it completely because the ultimate goal of the boss fight is to have him not attack at all, or attack in such a way that he whiffs every single time. The first problem is that the attack is not really telegraphed well because the animation for him charging up the attack before the attack happens kinda looks like what he looks like when he's stunned, or taking damage, or isn't really animated enough to really give you a tell that he's going to do the attack. Second is that for whatever reason, Capcom decided to give you a decent window, like 2 or 3 seconds before the attack hits you for you to dodge. And this is kind of bullshit because there is no way to dodge in this game, and giving you that window is a pretty big dick move because you're giving the player false hope. If the Proto-Tyrant is going to launch that attack and if you're in its path, then there really isn't much you can do to avoid the damage. And the other problem with the attack is that it's just too high of damage. And the AoE on it is completely ridiculous because is a giant swipe of his arm, and the angle at which it comes in, the perspectives which aren't really helpful, means that he has a huge AoE on that attack where he just levels the fuck out of Rebecca Chambers. Like, he comes over and smashes her so hard that she just starts flying around into the walls. I don't know if this would have necessarily improved the boss fight, but, you know, a different animation for the arm attack, something, you know, downward to upward strike, an uppercut sort of attack would have probably been better because it would have removed a lot of the AoE of the attack. An instantaneous charge forward would probably have been better than the regular charge forward that gives the player that false hope. And ultimately, what kind of screws over this boss fight is that if you do it how you're supposed to do it quote-unquote correctly, then this giant intimidating figure with this ridiculous weapon comprising its entire right arm turns into a ridiculous sideshow fit for 7-year-olds. Because a good strategy, possibly the best strategy, is what you saw in this video. You're supposed to be behind the Proto-Tyrant all the time trying to bait it into an attack, but if he never attacks and leaves himself wide open, then you're doing a completely ridiculous, ludicrous looking dance with the Proto-Tyrant, just spinning in circles over and over again, waiting for someone to flinch. And it's just completely silly. Like, the entire thing you were going for goes right out the window because this is the best way to avoid damage. And then whenever you get an opening, just take an aim at its head with your weapon of choice, mine was the Magnum obviously, and start taking pot shots. Strangely enough, in a canonical sense, the Proto-Tyrant is actually able to take damage better than the original Tyrant project. And another thing, the original Tyrant from Resident Evil, for whatever stupid reason, even though it was considered the ultimate BOW at the time, Umbrella designed it to have its heart outside of its chest. And this happened multiple times throughout the phases of the Tyrant project. How many times do you have to see giant BOWs, giant biological weapons, with hearts outside of their chests, the thing that keeps them technically alive, and not think that that was a dumb design decision? Ultimately, the Proto-Tyrant, even though it comes out of complete nowhere, is a great show of challenge, a great thing to actually take out your big weapons and start using them on the Proto-Tyrant. He's challenging, somewhat bullshit, but it's enough bullshit to where it plays more into the challenge level and doesn't just ultimately ruin the boss. It's a good show of skill, even though there are some things in it that kind of land on the fence between skill and luck, which, again, like I've noted, do take chinks out of the boss fight's quality, but ultimately it's still a very solid challenge, and something that is very satisfying once it's finished, even though you'll probably have to expend a few attempts to finally get it done. And ultimately, its design, while intellectually stupid for the people who made it, is great. The Proto-Tyrant, because it doesn't have to be as clinical and as perfect as the original Tyrant, means that it becomes more intimidating, because its limbs are fucked up, it's covered in blood, it just has way more color on its body, its head is lopsided, and that arm that it has, that giant spike growing where his hand should be, is just awesome. Like, the design of the Proto-Tyrant is flat out amazing. I wish that it could have been refined a little bit, really given the set piece treatment, the cinematic quality to really show off its stuff. But what we got right here is damned good. I really do appreciate the work that Capcom put into this, because it really, really does help out liven the otherwise, frankly, mediocre and unnecessary factory level. In the story, it really is just a giant obstacle between Rebecca and reuniting with Billy and getting on with the rest of the story. Its purpose for the game is just being a giant elevator from A to B. That's really all it is. But to get the Proto-Tyrant in on this is definitely a thumbs-up maneuver from Capcom. When they do hit it on the head, they can hit it on the head. It's just that Capcom really isn't 100% consistent on quality design, I'm just saying.